Okay, hi everybody. My name is Craig Schulz. I'm Director of External Affairs for the Gateway Program at Amtrak. Very happy to be here again at Infra Day. Thank you, Ken, for having us. I'm here with three of my awesome colleagues who are already taking a selfie, I see here up on the stage. Petra Messick, Jeannie, Kwon, and Derick Hallahan. So look forward to a really great discussion with them in just a moment, but I thought it might be helpful for me to do a little bit of sort of scene setting here and just kind of set the stage for our conversation. So I'll do that. I will start by telling you that it is an awesome time to work at Amtrak. I think I said that actually here last year. It's still an awesome time to work at Amtrak. We have an unprecedented level of support among stakeholders, among politicians and elected officials, really at the federal, state, and in most cases, local levels. Historic investment through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, which we'll talk about in just a second. Strong return of passenger demand. Amtrak services, Amtrak ridership is booming. We're at 24% year-over-year growth. In some cases above, in many cases above pre-pandemic ridership levels on routes. We have a really aggressive strategy for growth, looking to develop new corridors and new services all across the country. Very dynamic station and onboard experience. If you haven't been on the train in a little while, you might notice some new features, some different things in the stations. A diverse and growing workforce. We've hired thousands of people in the past year, have more in the pipeline, expecting to hire thousands more. And a really ambitious, exciting target for net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2045. So a lot of work going on and a lot of exciting things happening. A lot of it really made possible by the funding that we have in place here. Thankfully, through Congress and the Biden administration, the Fed-State partnership is really the kind of marquee program for the Northeast Corridor, at least, administered by the Federal Railroad Administration. I see Mike Kaczewski in the audience. Good to see you, Mike. $16 billion unlocked just this year, announced for 25 projects on the Northeast Corridor. And I will tell you that while that is a huge amount of money, it is a drop in the bucket in terms of what we actually need to really fully rectify the state of good repair backlog on the Northeast Corridor. But an important, very, very important starting point. That is providing funding for projects in both the Gateway program here in the New York, New Jersey area, the Hudson Tunnel project, which I'm sure you heard about this morning. I know Steve Sigmund was here, but also other elements of the Gateway program. Dock Bridge, which you may not have heard as much about in Newark, over the Passaic River, as well as the Sawtooth Bridges over in New Jersey. Critical parts of the Gateway program that now have funding that are available to them that has not been there before. And then other projects outside the New York, New Jersey area, like the Frederick Douglass Tunnel and Susquehanna River Bridge, Connecticut River Bridge, some of these projects that Derick will talk a little bit about in his portfolio. Again, big mega projects that had been long overdue need to be advanced, and we're finally now moving forward on these in a way that we haven't been able to before. And then partner-led projects. The Hudson Tunnel project actually isn't an Amtrak project. It's a GDC is the project sponsor, the Gateway Development Commission. And similarly, Penn Station Access is a project led by MTA. Amtrak is a partner. So we have different dynamics in place, but a lot of projects moving forward, whether they're led by Amtrak or in some cases by our commuter partners. And then around the country, really outside the Northeast, there's a lot of excitement going on a lot of excitement around the potential for new services, in addition to, and some even here in the Northeast. Here in New York, actually, the Corridor ID program is going to study the extension of the Northeast Regional Service out to Long Island, out to Ronkonkoma, to provide intercity passenger service out to Long Island for the first time in decades. Scranton to New York City is another one in this area. Those trains will go through the North River Tunnel, the Gateway Tunnel, by the way. So, but beyond that, outside of the Northeast, Amtrak is looking to advance in partnership with FRA and our local and state partners, new corridors, really, to bring more trains to more people and more places and really grow the network. And a really exciting milestone for Jeannie and her program, the CHIP program in Chicago, where we just were awarded upwards of $100 million for 2 elements of the CHIP program, which is the Chicago Hub Improvement Program, I think, right, Jeannie? Yeah. To essentially kind of untangle freight and passenger service going in and out of Chicago, and Jeannie will talk a little bit about that in just a moment. But that was a really exciting milestone. And we have a lot of exciting plans here, right? So this is a little shot of like what our kind of capital program has looked like traditionally up to now. And you see a big jump there in FY23 and 24 and 25. We are scaling up at a major, major rate, right? This is kind of unprecedented level growth. You know, we're going from $2 billion in capital spend to $4 billion to $6 billion over the course of like, you know, 5 years or less than 5 years. So that is driving a lot of change within the organization. We have a capital delivery organization of which all of us are a part here. Laura Mason is our executive vice president, joined Amtrak a few years ago. And has really stood up this program, this department, really in evolving Amtrak from a passenger railroad, sort of just strictly about running trains, maintaining the railroad, to now evolving into a major builder, not just an operator of railroad, but a major builder of U.S. rail infrastructure. So, that requires a whole set of new project managers and new functions within the organization and new ways of thinking about projects as well. So we will talk a little bit about that. As I said, we have 3 of my very esteemed colleagues here. Jeannie Kwon is our Vice President of Mega Program Development and Coordination. She joined Amtrak a couple of years ago, coming up on her 2-year anniversary. Derick, on the end over here, is our AVP for Major Programs, Tunnels, and Systems. Joined Amtrak just about 6 months ago. So a newbie here. Thanks, Derick. And Petra Messick over here, right to my left, is Senior Program Manager, or Senior Program Director for the Gateway Program, and has been with Amtrak for 10 years. And my favorite story is that she came here to work on the Gateway Program, started on day one of, her day one was Superstorm Sandy, actually, which flooded the North River Tunnel, and has really set her up for a good 10 years of job security. So. Anyway, okay, so I'm going to sit down here. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Thank you all again for joining us. Jeannie, I'm going to start with you. You know, we talked a lot about, or you know, I talked a little bit about some of the big projects, the big, you know, big checks, the money that's coming our way. Yeah. But the idea of organizing ourselves in this way around mega programs is something new to Amtrak. And I thought maybe you could talk a little bit about sort of why we've decided to move in that direction and sort of your portfolio and how that all fits together.
Sure. Okay. Oh, this is definitely working. So hi, everybody. I'm Jeannie Kwon, Vice President for Mega Programs at Amtrak in the Capital Delivery Department. And previously, so I joined Amtrak in March of 2022, and we reorganized in October, where we formally set up the Mega Programs division within Capital Delivery, and I lead that. And I think that if we think about the IIJA and what a real watershed moment that is in terms of all of these dollars, billions and billions of dollars, where Amtrak has not seen it before at this scale. I mean, of course, you can imagine that the organization as a whole, I mean, not just Capital Delivery and departments within Capital Delivery, but Amtrak as a whole has had to transform in order to be able to properly plan, design, and execute these dollars that are being now invested into American infrastructure, right? So, and that includes everything from protecting our core and, you know, what our long-term expansion needs are. So Amtrak's 2045 strategic goals include doubling service, right? We're looking to 66 million passengers a year. So what does that mean in terms of projects, and how does that relate to the mega programs? So I have 3 mega programs. They are, and you all know, the big one, the granddaddy or the grandmommy is Gateway, which you'll hear more about from Petra. So we have Gateway for this region, which I don't need to say about how incredibly important that is. But what we've also recognized in the Midwest, where we have an incredible Midwest congressional delegation, is the need to actually invest in our #1 national hub for passenger rail and also freight rail, right, which is in Chicago. And that program is called the Chicago Hub Improvement Program. In fact, I just got back from Chicago last night. I was there all week last week. So that is a humongous priority for Amtrak. And it's, if we say there are 3 geographies in my portfolio, so Gateway is 1, Chicago is 2. Gateway is, we're up and running, man. So like we've got that thing going. Petra has got it under control. Derick now with Hudson Tunnel project, right? CHIP is at more of an infancy stage, right? So meeting with the incredible delegation, going after this money. As Craig said, we got $100 million for initial station investments, which was fabulous, right? And the federal government has recognized that as an initial investment in CHIP into the station for Chicago Union Station. But what we really need to do there is expand the capacity and reliability of passenger rail. I'll talk a little bit about that later on. And then the third one is Washington Union Station expansion project. So that is the one, that is a station that is actually not owned by Amtrak. It is the only station that is owned by the US DOT, right? And there is an EIS that has been in the works. We're looking probably at a first quarter of 2024 record of decision for that station development and the expansion. And I think essentially what we recognize with these mega programs is that 1, they're generational, 2, they're complex in terms of partnerships, stakeholders, and managing all those very complex stakeholders and keeping everybody at the table. So Gateway's got its own set, Chicago's got its own set, DC's got its own set, right? And we also recognize that it is a program of projects, each with that have its own independent utility, but collectively they have an incredibly great impact, and we're looking at somewhere about $10 billion. And so it's not just also, it's environmental, it's ensuring we have the funding, it's ensuring we have the right agreements with the right partners, where can we also look and leverage from other mega programs, and that there needs to be a concerted effort to coordinate these projects, because oftentimes you'll have projects at different points of development in the life cycle, but sequentially you need to make sure that everything is fitting together. So it's a separate model that we realize that deserves this type of model of management. And so there you have mega programs. Sorry I talked for so long.
No, that was great. And it actually kind of leads nicely into my next question, which is for Petra here about the Gateway program. And I mean, I'm listening to Jeannie talk about stakeholder coordination and the different parts that have to fit together. And I feel like if there's ever a program, it's Gateway that has all of those things. I think a lot of people are familiar with the Hudson Tunnel Project. A lot of people might sort of think the Hudson Tunnel Project is the Gateway program, but there's more to Gateway than just the tunnel. And so I thought maybe you could talk a little bit about the importance of what we sort of refer to as the phase 2 projects, and really why it's so important that Gateway advance, that we expand the capacity here at the heart of the Northeast Corridor.
Sure, thank you, Craig. Good afternoon. So Jeannie called Gateway the granddaddy or the grandmother, but I actually think of Gateway as approaching its adolescent stage. It's been about 10 years, and she's finally sort of gaining some independence, some confidence, forging key relationships, and starting to make strides toward the person that she will end up being. So in a nutshell, Gateway is a program that's focused on a 2-track stretch of the Northeast Corridor, and it's about bringing that 10 miles of railway, one of our most constrained points on the NEC, bringing it to a state of good repair, because much of that trackage and the bridges that support it and the tunnel it goes through is over 100 years old. And then adding 2 tracks to allow capacity for future growth. So why do we need this additional capacity? It may seem obvious, but it's worth talking about. If you look at the New Jersey commuter shed over the last 3 decades, that commutation has grown by about 62%, just going back to 1990. to a number just under 500,000 daily passengers into Midtown Manhattan. And that is about 2/3 of the non-New York City commuter growth that we've seen in recent years. But it's also really about a policy decision of providing all of these important commuter communities that have grown around transit with a one-seat ride into Manhattan. It's also about supporting Amtrak's goal of expanding service, expanding its ridership to meet the climate change challenge that we have before us. And to do that, to double track capacity and to grow from what we have today, which is about 24 trains per hour in the peak direction, to about 48 trains per hour from the west, under the Hudson River into Manhattan. We need a series of projects, not just the new tunnel under the Hudson River, but the two tracks that stretch all the way from Manhattan to Newark. So projects that are underway: Hudson Tunnel Project, build a new tunnel, rehab the existing two-track tunnel. Portal North Bridge replaces the existing two-track bridge over the Hackensack River. But then other projects that you saw on the slide earlier that just received Fed State Grant Awards: Dock Bridge, which is a resiliency project that takes a movable bridge just east of Newark Station and turns it to a fixed bridge and rehabilitates that bridge, giving it resiliency for another 100 years plus. Sawtooth, which is a series of bridge spans in New Jersey that cross over other railroads, Conrail, New Jersey Transit, PATH, in pretty tough condition, replacing that two-track capacity and adding another two tracks. And then there are projects like Portal South Bridge, which will be the twin bridge of Portal North, expanding the trackage through Secaucus Junction, and the Bergen Loop, which is a project that provides a new one-seat ride to Orange and Rockland County in New York and the main Bergen lines on New Jersey Transit. Those are passengers that currently have to transfer at Secaucus and would get a one-seat ride into Manhattan. So again, it's about providing that low-carbon, electrified rail option to get into Manhattan, where we have a concentration of jobs for our region that powers the region's growth, but continues to remain important even in an era of remote work. We still see people coming to the city, and we expect that to continue to grow in the future.
Thanks, Petra. So Derick, I'm going to turn to you. You're in charge of tunnels and systems, so you're a busy guy in New York. We've heard a lot, as you know, we just did a little bit more about the Hudson Tunnel Project, but Amtrak is actually about to begin on a really critical intercity tunnel rehab project under the East River Tunnel Rehab Program. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, and then actually I think it might be interesting for folks to understand sort of how we are looking to leverage that project and sort of, take some of, how we're looking to, sort of how that relates to the Gateway program. I don't want to steal your thunder.
Sure. Thank you, Craig. We're embarking on this very exciting East River Tunnel major rehabilitation project. I just joined Amtrak about 6 months ago, as Craig mentioned, and got right involved pretty much from day one on this program. We are actually expecting contractor bids tomorrow, so are moving quickly through a procurement process right now. The East River Tunnel project is we are taking 2 of the 4 East River tunnels out of service for individual 13-month period. We're doing a complete gut job of the entire lines 1 and line 2 of those tunnels, all the way down to the concrete liner. We're putting in brand new track, direct fixation track, systems, signals, traction power, communications, and catenary infrastructure throughout the entire tunnels. We will have new fire life safety and ventilation measures in the tunnel, and new and better, safer forms of passenger egress for emergency purposes. And as Craig mentioned, this is extremely important because both the East River tunnels and the North River tunnels that are part of the Gateway program were constructed and designed at relatively the same period in the early 1900s. So all the lessons that we will be learning we expect to award the contract first quarter next year. We expect to take line 2 out of service in about the August-September timeframe of next year. That will be a 13-month duration. We'll have a 3-month gap to do some ongoing maintenance and state of good repair within the 2 tunnels in between, and then we'll take line 1 out of service for another 13 months for that entire rehabilitation job. So over the next 40 months or so, we will learn a tremendous amount. Some of the things that we will use as lessons learned for East River tunnels to inform those North River tunnel construction and rehabilitation in the future. On the design side, the types of materials to use, stainless steel versus no carbon steel within the tunnel, replacing ballasted track in the tunnels with direct fixation track. Major lessons learned on outage planning, both during construction over the next few years, but also during the design phase, because we need to get in there to do surveys, LiDAR surveys, ground penetrating radar, to understand what we may encounter behind those duct benches once we rip them out, because we're trying to account for any kind of unforeseen conditions so that we can react very quickly and keep the construction contract on schedule. So looking at a lot of stakeholder and third-party lessons learned. So we've begun the East River Tunnel well before I arrived at Amtrak, had already begun major service planning, outage planning operations with Amtrak, Long Island Railroad, New Jersey Transit to understand the service schedules that may be affected, and well in advance of those tunnels going out of service. So as we approach over the next several years the North River tunnels, we will continue to do the same thing, because it's not, it doesn't happen quickly. All these agreements and third-party coordination efforts that need to take place, especially with some of the adjacent property holders and utility carriers like Verizon and AT&T that are existing in both tunnels. Construction risk mitigations is a huge item that we've been preparing for with East River tunnels, and we will use the next 4 years to significantly inform the types of challenges that we may expect on the North River tunnels. Things like doing early works packages for redundancy and traction powder signal feeders to do early works before any of those tunnels go out of services. We call them unknown unknowns. What will we find once we start ripping out that duct bench, and what will come out with those duct benches? We're hoping not much, but we have to create plans for the things that may happen once we get in there and start to uncover and reveal the things that have been in there for the last 100+ years. How we're doing that, we're incorporating things into our procurement strategies, risk strategies, allowance for repair items, unit price items with the contract bids. And as I mentioned, like, we will learn a tremendous amount over the next few years with East River tunnels to greatly inform what we need to do to move quickly, keep the contract on schedule, and keep it within budget. Have significant hazardous materials plans, groundwater discharge permits, and things like dust collection systems for the amount of silica dust that we expect to encounter within both tubes. So.
Awesome, thanks, Derick. I mean, it is, as a non-construction person, I mean, I didn't know much about any of this stuff when I started at Amtrak. I will say it is truly incredible, the amount of work and coordination and the technical expertise involved in these things is really remarkable. So thanks, Derick. Jeannie, I'm going to come back to you. We talked a little bit about Gateway on the west side, and we talked a little bit about East River Tunnel. Right in the middle is Penn Station, sort of the heart of it all. So with Penn Station in your portfolio, I thought maybe you'd be a good person to talk a little bit about sort of where we stand on Penn Station, Amtrak's relationship to Penn Station, and the path forward.
Okay, so let's talk about Penn Station. And so actually sort of pivots nicely because, yeah, where does all that trackage lead to? And then it's like, how do customers experience the service, right? And so we all are very familiar with Penn Station. And I will just add a couple of statistics about Penn. So clearly it is, Amtrak owns Penn Station, New York, right? We have a lot, it is one of the most complicated tenant leasehold environments that we have. But the main operators there are New Jersey Transit, Long Island Railroad, we are there, and we have 2 projects, Penn Reconstruction and Penn Expansion. Both of those projects are in preliminary engineering and design phase with 2 different consultant teams. One project is focused on the entire renovation and the customer experience for the existing Penn, and Penn expansion is focused on the capacity needs and ultimately and importantly connection to the Hudson Tunnel project. While these are two separate projects that are happening from an engineering perspective, right, it is so important that they move along the same trajectory, right, and that they be managed at the same time. It is 2/3 of all trips on the Northeast Corridor start and end at Penn Station. That is, it is a significant base of crew operations, of just all of our operations, even though on the surface, yes, Moynihan Train Hall is open. It is an absolutely beautiful station, but think about it from the train perspective going downstairs, and those customers, when they come out off the platform, not everybody wants to go and exit out on 8th Avenue, right? They have to experience it as a whole. Many of them want to leave from the east side, or they just want to get out of the station and get to their final destination, right? So I think it is an extremely important asset for us. We are working with our partners, MTA and New Jersey Transit. MTA is the lead for Penn reconstruction, and we're moving forward with that. Sarah Appleton, Sarah, stand up. She is our deputy director for that project at Amtrak. Stay standing so people can see you, Sarah. So if you have specific questions for her on the project, feel free to talk to Sarah. One of the things that I'll add that is really important to us is how the local community around Penn Station, the local elected officials and their constituents particularly experience, feel what they want to see, and they must have a say in the Penn complex. And we've heard a lot as it relates to the renovation of Penn and Penn reconstruction in terms of the 8th Avenue side, right? And of course, there's the issue of the loading dock with Madison Square Garden, and we have very productive conversations with MSG, but it's important also for us to, as we do go down this path of design work, sort of reflect and mirror back to the community what it is that we're hearing and actually like really listen. And like one of the things that we've heard is the 8th Avenue entrance and just stitching all parts of the station from the surface in terms of what the community experience will ultimately be like is important. So we are also looking at that. I also want to recognize, I see Luke Bridle, who is sitting here, and we've had some great discussions with ASTM, who have certainly elevated the discussion of Penn Station in New York. I think, you know, we've all recognized that. And if I've forgotten anything, you guys can all talk to Sarah, who's back in the corner. So thanks.
Well, I'm actually going to give Petra a chance to weigh in also here on Penn Station, just because I know Penn Station is really critical to the Gateway program here also. So if you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I would be remiss if I didn't make the point that Penn expansion is key to unlocking the capacity goals of the Gateway program, which I was talking about earlier. I'll also just highlight some of the design challenges that we're working through. I can't overstate the complexity of both of these projects and the challenge, which also speaks to the gentleman from Metro North who was presenting previously, of doing work, you know, around an active railroad and minimizing disruptions to operations. Both of the projects are dealing with that. But some of the key design challenges that we're working through include how to knit the different you know, head houses of the Penn Station complex together, Penn to Moynihan, and then to a future Penn expansion. And also, you know, how to delight our customers, how to really improve that customer experience across the complex by making it legible and beautiful. And then finally, how to accommodate that additional rail capacity in Manhattan. We will have an entirely new tunnel bringing an additional, you know, hopefully an additional 24 trains into the city. These trains are very long, and, you know, we're looking to accommodate a smooth rail operation while minimizing impacts on the built environment. So that, you know, that sort of speaks to really the challenge before us in both of these projects, but particularly Penn expansion on that last point. And that's the work that's going on right now.
So I want to go back to Derick here real quick also, because the Northeast Corridor doesn't sort of, New York and Penn Station and Gateway doesn't just sort of exist in a vacuum. It's a whole network. The corridor as a whole is, it functions obviously. It is an integrated unit. And we have work going on all up and down the corridor. So if you could talk a little bit, Derick, about the projects in your portfolio, Susquehanna River Bridge and some of the other big ones that, Frederick Douglass Tunnel that, will help to drive that ridership increase that we've been talking about, how it will sort of help Amtrak reach our strategic goals.
Sure. We can talk about the magnitude of projects all throughout the Northeast Corridor. And at the end of the day, they're all regionally connected. They're all about getting better service from either New York to points down at Washington, D.C., or up to Boston, or from those points into New York or through the area. All these projects, Frederick Douglass Tunnel, Portal Bridge, Sawtooth Bridges, Dock Bridge, Connecticut River Bridge, Penn Station Access, things that you've heard about, they're all requiring lots of resources to get these projects done. So in addition to that, we're also looking at some very specific and pointed signal improvement projects, all with the emphasis between DC and Boston to get faster trains and more reliable service. We're specifically looking at catenary upgrades, all with the intent, again, faster trains and more reliable service. Those will benefit not just Amtrak, it'll benefit other commuter partners along the Northeast Corridor as well. I know we're here in New York today, so a lot of those projects are right out on the other side of the river in New Jersey between essentially Trenton and Newark. A lot of those are catenary or signal improvement projects. Substation 41 is a major rehabilitation and reconstruction of that substation to allow for more efficient and more resilient operations here. The East River Tunnel rehabilitation we talked about, and things like the Herald interlocking we're doing with MTA, some of the eastbound reroute and the westbound bypass work. These are all requiring significant resources from Amtrak, from the industry to get these projects completed. As you heard from Metro North as well, we talk a lot about force account. And that is a significant emphasis for us right now at Amtrak of how we're trying to grow our force account resources. How are we doing that? We're looking at very early engagement on projects, looking at hiring plans. You cannot just hire force account staff and have them go work out on the railroad in a week from now. It takes in essence, months to hire. It takes, in essence, for electric traction personnel, there can be a 2-year training period before they're qualified to go work and safely protect the railroad and get these projects completed. So we're looking at projects 2 to 3 years in advance of actual needs and boots on the ground. We also have high-level strategy sessions to look at long-term planning, any projects that are going to be over the next 10 to 15 years, more midterm planning over the next 3 to 12 months, and then the very near term, what we're doing over the next 8 weeks to make sure that we keep projects running smoothly. All that work requires a lot of quality work planning. So what are the designs being developed? How are they being constructed? And getting the right people in the room to understand what type of force account personnel will need it. It's not just a blanket force account generic statement. It's, do you need communications resources, signal resources, track resources, ET resources, and trying to align the personnel with the plan so that can feed into the hiring. We're trying to weave in, or we are weaving in, accountability. So in our contracts, we're stating not just force account will be provided, we're stating by discipline within force account, how many people will be provided, so that contractors, designers, and our third-party partners can understand how we're going to get these projects done. It can feed into a more reliable schedule and budget.
All right, we have like 2 minutes left, but this is my favorite question. So Petra's been here about 10 years, been with Amtrak 10 years, Jeannie about 2 years, and Derick about 6 months. So I thought you guys each have kind of unique perspectives on Amtrak and sort of the state of the industry. So in 1 minute and 57 seconds, the three of you guys, if you could maybe, Petra, I'll start with you. Sort of, in your 10 years here, how has Amtrak kind of evolved, and what's your sort of outlook on where we're going?
Well, the biggest change that we've undertaken in my tenure is going from, at least within the infrastructure division, a maintenance, railroad maintenance operation with some planning to building a construction company within Amtrak, to deliver projects, and with a huge focus on project management and project controls. So building that up has been really exciting, and I'm really proud of all the progress that we've made and have really come a long, long way. I'll say the one thing that hasn't changed is I still have, the wonderful experience of working with really great colleagues.
Well played. All right. Jeannie, do you want to go next?
So Petra would be an old timer at any other railroad. So this is a new timer. I mean, a newbie at any other railroad. And this is my third railroad. But Amtrak has hired about 4,500 people in the last year, both agreement and non-agreement. And we are also on track to hire about that same number. And I have 2 years in, and I'm constantly meeting people who are even newer than me. And I think kind of just going off the point that Petra made, it's like we've had to transform as a company and really just sort of think in terms of, holistically, what does that mean for every single department in terms of capital delivery, procurement, law, human resources, our transportation operations, right? How we, our view of the world as a company has had to change as a result of this. I will say that I'm having a lot of fun. I think it's very demanding at Amtrak, but in a way that has been incredibly rewarding, just because I think the people are great. I will just say, stay tuned, keep your eyes open. We are constantly hiring. In terms of our capital delivery, I mean, there is a big focus, Petra mentioned it, in terms of project controls, where we're really moving towards a model in terms of our project management, CM, estimating, scheduling, commercial, everything. It actually has to fall under a project lead. You need one throat to choke to be accountable for the project. Nobody does any choking at Amtrak, so trust me. But in terms of accountability, that's really important, and that's the model that we've really moved towards. And for me, it's like when I first saw it before I started Amtrak, I remember saying to my husband, if we get 40% of what is in this plan done, I'll be impressed. And it's actually been 100% of that plus more, and just more keeps coming. Derick?
Yeah, I know we're over time. I'll just wrap it up quick. I've been here 6 months. It's been an incredibly exciting period. I look at, and so we're working with some of my colleagues here and some others in the office or in other offices. It's really about getting things done, building a team. We are still hiring, right? We'll keep reiterating that. And finding a way to get collaboration and coordination around all these programs and projects that we're working on. It's really about not taking no for an answer, finding new ways to do things. We just implemented, for one of the first times, a 55-hour weekday outage. It started at 9 p.m. last night. It's going now up on the Hellgate line. It's different from when we used to do more weekend-oriented outages, so this is something that we're testing to see how it goes. Finding new ways to deliver this major program and collaborating within the service organization and understand that we are a service provider, but we're also a builder in getting things done. So, thank you.
All right, we're all set. Thank you very much, Ken. Thanks, everybody.